than ever, a worryingly large racism within the US military.
Well, Kevin, it really looks like it is, but determining exactly how far this problem stretches is extremely hard to do. This is a very difficult task, and the issue itself is by no means easy. What we do know is that human rights groups and hate monitoring groups have been growing extremely concerned here in the United States. One of the main hate monitoring groups in the United States, the Southern Poverty Law Center, has been asking Congress to investigate the issue of racism in the U.S. military. This group has been saying that dozens of people have been registering on a social networking site that identifies itself as for whites, by whites, and about 130 people out of the 7,900 people registered on this website identify themselves as military. Now, another important indicator of how far the problem stretches is that war veterans themselves, returning from Iraq, returning from Afghanistan, have been saying, yes, the issue is very widespread. Extremism and racism is really plaguing the U.S. military, and some have suggested that the problem even arises from top commanders, top officials on the ground who express extremist and racist attitudes, and these kinds of approaches go down and are later adopted by soldiers who begin to behave the same way. And war veterans have been saying that rooting out extremism in the U.S. military is going to be a very difficult task just because the problem is so widespread.
Alistair C., when was the alarm first raised about this, and what's being done?
Well, Kevin, this issue has been around for several years now. The Bush administration failed to do anything about it. So has the Pentagon, even though it had acknowledged in a 2008 report that the problem has really grown and the issue of racism has become even more serious in the U.S. military. But however, for this issue to be addressed, enormous will and control and really serious approaches from the top need to be taken, and so far analysts have been saying that the U.S. military really has adopted a don't ask, don't tell approach, and this is why the issue is so widespread. Now, this hate monitoring group, which tracks right-wing militia groups and racist groups in the United States, has now called for Congress to investigate this issue. However, whether or not this voice is going to be heard in Washington, D.C. still remains to be seen.
Alistair Churkin reporting from New York there. Thank you.
God dang racist America. Hold on for a few seconds for this small little interlude.
This is an Iraq war story, a tragedy really, about two men in the same army unit, one shot by the other and left paralyzed from the chest down. It's a case that raises a number of troubling questions about the potential consequences of repeated tours of duty, about an attempted cover-up, even about the security of a presidential candidate.
My name is Dwayne Cole, and this is what happened to me in Iraq. I was a resident of Brooklyn, New York, 28 years old. I'm a member, or was a member, of the U.S. Army Reserve. I did 2 tours in Iraq. The first tour was 04-05, Camp Anaconda. My second tour was 06-07 at QS Base.
Sergeant Cole survived 2 roadside bomb attacks, the second worse than the first.
We were just driving along in the line as usual, and the rear tires of the flatbed fell into a pothole. It was another big explosion. I saw the flames coming up towards the door. I was like, uh-oh. I was real surprised.
Another sergeant in his unit, Thomas Brzezinski, was also on his second tour of duty in Iraq, despite being wounded 8 months earlier.
We never had any arguments or any discrepancies with each other. So I have no idea at this minute to tell why he actually shot me.
I know why.
Sergeant Cole tells it like this. He was visiting friends in their living quarters at about 1 a.m. He sat down on a bunk, browsed through a car magazine. Sergeant Brzezinski was watching television.
Then after that, I saw him pull out the 9mm from inside him. So I went back in the magazine. I just kept my eyes in the magazine, and I heard him say, "You know I'm going to shoot you, right?" And I said, "Shoot me?" I said, "For what?"
Did you think he was just playing?
Yeah, I think he was just joking around or something. So I just ignored what he was saying. Went back in the magazine. I was riding through the magazine. Then he's like, I want to shoot you. Then he said, well, hear this. Since you could dodge IEDs, let me see you dodge this bullet.
Meaning the 2 explosions you survived.
Yes. Then the Beretta was right to his left hip, and he squeezed the trigger. Then I was shot. I lost so much blood. My whole PT uniform was red. I couldn't feel my right hand or my left hand. I couldn't feel my legs. I just prayed to God, and I hope I'll be able to go home, and I'll be able to see my family again, that everything will be okay with me.
Sergeant Cole was evacuated to Landstuhl Army Hospital in Germany. The family says the Army at first misinformed them about what really happened.
They lied? No.
February 28th at about 6 a.m., which was my mother's birthday, my wife received a call from the Pentagon saying that I was shot in the neck and that it was a training accident. They also went on to say that a 9mm weapon had fell on my shoulder, and that's what caused me to get shot in the neck. They thought that I wasn't probably going to make it, so they tried to get their story together. But afterwards, finding out that I was stable in Germany, then they tried to switch stuff around.
What happened with the investigation is still unclear, but at least one Army investigator was suspicious from the get-go. In an email to Sergeant Cole, he said, this case was almost not a case. There was no investigation by CID initially. The reason was that the witnesses in the room all lied. There was a cover-up going on at first.
No shit.
Eventually, Brzezinski was charged with failure to obey a general order or regulation, assault with a dangerous weapon, and reckless endangerment. And here's where the story takes another odd turn. Last March, after he'd already admitted shooting Sergeant Cole, and while his court-martial trial was still pending, Sergeant Brzezinski was one of the soldiers standing in uniform to greet Senator John McCain at a Washington ceremony honoring soldiers in Iraq and Afghanistan. How was a soldier accused of shooting a member of his own Army unit permitted to get so close to the Republican presidential candidate? Was it an oversight, poor judgment, a security breach? The Army told us there were no pretrial restrictions for Brzezinski because he was not considered a threat. During court-martial proceedings, Sergeant Brzezinski showed signs of what appeared to be acute stress. His attorney described his condition this way during a deposition.
He is in what appears to me to be a near catatonic state, to speak loosely. He is shivering and shaking, and he's been teary-eyed and drooling, staring off into space.
During his trial this summer, Brzezinski acknowledged drinking alcohol on the night of the shooting. He testified that he did not recall key moments of the incident. A military judge convicted Brzezinski on all counts. He faced up to 13 years in a military prison, but was sentenced to 4.5 years and is now seeking clemency. Sergeant Cole is expected to spend the rest of his life in a wheelchair.
I haven't really lived much of my life. I'm still young, 20 years old. As you can see my present condition, I can't really do much for myself. Someone has to be there to do for me what I can't do for myself. I have no idea if I'd even be able to have any kids in the future, which really just tears me apart. I always pray to God that I'll be able to recover from this, but I don't know. To be honest with you.
Sergeant Brzezinski declined comment through his attorney, but in an email he sent to Sergeant Cole 5 weeks after the shooting, he said, "I want you to know that I have never been more sorry in my life. That night was a mistake, a total accident."
Man, fuck that dude.